Hi there, I'm Erin Harner, gut health, IBS, and SIBO coach, and I am here with my colleague, Sachi, and I'm so excited to introduce you to her because she is an amazing resource when it comes to the gut thyroid connection. So, we're going to dig into a topic that you may be wondering about. What about the gut symptoms that maybe aren't just about what's going on in your gut? How do the other pieces fit into the puzzle? So, if you're struggling with something like fatigue or bloating, constipation, or stubborn weight, when nothing seems to be working, the missing piece could actually be your thyroid. So I've invited my colleague Sashi here. She's a nurse practitioner with tons of experience in the field, and I would love to get her take on the topic of how the gut and the thyroid can be really connected. So we're going to talk about when to suspect your thyroid might be a piece of the puzzle, why normal lab results might not tell you the whole story, and what simple things you can start doing right away to support your thyroid naturally. So, Sashi, how did you get involved in this field in the first place?
Absolutely. So I came from a background of healthcare providers. I've always been interested in health and wellness, but it was like my own health crisis and thyroid condition in my early 20s that really led me to dig deep and find some holistic answers for myself. Because at the time that I was diagnosed, I went to a number of specialists and I really had to train myself. And it led me to functional medicine. And that's what I specialize in now and helping hundreds of women with the same things that I dealt with.
It's interesting because so many of us get into this field as a result of our own health issues. Like I have a very similar story seeing doctor after doctor after doctor, and no one could figure out what was going on. And the only tool they had was a prescription pad, and that was it. And there's so much more to the puzzle. So, fatigue, brain fog, constipation, and bloating. When should women suspect that thyroid might be a piece of the puzzle here?
So our thyroid gland is the master of our metabolism. And so there's a saying that if you have a slow, sluggish thyroid, you could have a slow, sluggish anything or everything. And even though brain fog seems really disconnected from constipation, those two things could absolutely have the same root cause. And I'd say especially, for my clients who are struggling kind of, to put together the dots or have tried many things, if they tried dietary things, taking things out of their diet, or have tried medications and they're still struggling with fatigue or brain fog or constipation, that's absolutely something that we'd want to evaluate, because the key thing is that you can change all of these things. You can take medications, but if you're not addressing the thyroid, it's just band-aids in the long term.
Yeah, 100%. Totally agree. Some people will go to their doctors and they'll ask them to check their thyroid, and their doctor might order a TSH. Can you first explain what TSH is and what happens if it looks normal? Why would they still feel off, or why might they still have a thyroid issue even if TSH looks normal? Is there any labs they should be asking for?
Yeah, absolutely. For those of us who practice functional medicine, the term normal is kind of the worst thing we can hear
Yeah.
because we work in the field of helping people to feel optimal. So there's a big difference there. The other thing, a TSH is what your primary care provider is going to order in like an annual exam. And while it can be good and helpful, it's usually not enough. It's not enough markers to evaluate for full thyroid function. So the things that I recommend for all of my clients to have at a minimum to be checked at least once a year is TSH. Thyroid stimulating hormone is a hormone that's basically made in our brain that tells the thyroid to produce hormone. So it's not actually evaluating the hormones themselves. So it's really only one small part of the picture. The other problem often is that lab reference ranges are super broad because it's comparing you to like majority of the population. And if we look around, we know that the majority of the population is not in optimal health. And so often that reference range is way too broad and it only captures, active disease process. When if we look at more that optimal, more narrow range for a TSH, most lab reference ranges will go up to 5. And that can make someone, if I were at a 5, I mean, I would be dragging so hard. But where I find that most of my clients feel their best is usually between a TSH of about 1 to 2.
Mhm.
So that's just one example. There, again, for a full thyroid panel, what we want to be checking in addition to TSH is a free T4, a free T3, and TPO and TBG antibodies. That's a check for autoimmunity because it's estimated that at least 80% of thyroid conditions are autoimmune in nature. Now, why does that even matter? Is because in conventional medicine, it's treated all the same, right? There's one medication given to everyone for this condition. And just to tell you about the prevalence of it is that Synthroid, that's the medication, or levothyroxine, that medication is the number 2 top prescribed medication in the United States.
Wow.
So as far as like prevalence, 1 in 5 women will be diagnosed with a thyroid condition in their lifetime. So very important to evaluate. I would say if anyone is feeling any of the symptoms that Erin mentioned, don't put off getting that full evaluation.
That is so important. Thank you so much, Sashi. And also explaining the piece where we think about TSH being a marker of thyroid function, and it kind of is, but it's not
Mhm.
even produced by the thyroid. It's a signal to the thyroid to produce thyroid hormone. So what I'm hearing from you and my own functional medicine training is like, we need to look at a bigger picture. We can't just look at this little tiny marker and say, oh, everything's fine and not worry about it. If these things might be going on, we need to dig a little deeper. Would you agree there?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm glad we're on the same page here. So, if thyroid function is off, like let's say the doctor does do a bigger panel, or someone like you, Sashi, does a bigger panel and not just look at TSH, but looks at other different markers of thyroid function, and we determine that it's off or it's not optimal. What are some simple practical shifts that people can make that will help support their thyroid?
So I work with a lot of busy moms in my practice. And so I love to give practical, tangible things that are accessible for most people to start out with. And I'd say that the number one thing where I would start with most people is to get really serious about how you handle your stress. We know, and this is not just woo woo, this is like research backed, that most disease processes are made worse or even started by the way that we handle our stress. And so it's a hard one to kind of conceptualize, but there are some really practical steps that you can do that are researched to help with it. And I mean, so probably one of them, again, because I work with a lot of busy moms, is deprioritizing. So if there's ways that we can make our schedule a little less crazy, a little less hectic and, and packed, that's a really helpful thing. Spending more time in nature, gratitude journaling, these are all things, spending more time in sunshine, that are free and actually work. Those are some of my favorite interventions. So that would probably be a number one thing. In addition to that, another thing I would say dietary wise, anything to help maintain more stable blood sugar. That's what a lot of research is showing. That is a big trigger, ups and downs with blood sugar. And so a simple thing is to have more consistent protein throughout the day. So that's a great, easy step that a lot of us, can do. Don't skip breakfast if you can. And again, really focusing on managing stress and building that stress resilience.
Mhm. So good. Thank you, Sachi. That's amazing. And we think of thyroid as being like, oh, it's your thyroid. But the thyroid is really important. It regulates your metabolism. It does so many important jobs. We think about blood sugar and like, how is blood sugar, how is stress related to the thyroid? It's intricately related, right? Everything in the body is connected. So we can't expect the gut to heal. We can't expect constipation or sluggish motility to get completely better if we haven't addressed the other pieces of the puzzle. And it sounds like this thyroid piece is a really important piece. And it sounds like it's also very prevalent for a lot of women, right? It's not
Absolutely.
like a small problem. You mentioned 1 in 5 women who get diagnosed with a thyroid disorder in their lifetime, many of which is like a Hashimoto's thyroiditis scenario where it's autoimmune in nature.
Mhm.
So that was a lot. And I want to just thank you because bringing this home is so important for people. Is there anything else you wanted to add or anything you're like just dying to share with the audience?
For sure. The one thing that I would say, as far as simple practical interventions, there are plenty of things that you can do here and now to be helpful. But the other thing I would urge you to do is to partner with someone who specializes, in gut health, like you do, Erin, or someone who specializes in managing and optimizing hormones and thyroid, because while you can, work on things on your own, absolutely, working with a specialist is what's going to get you to where you want to go faster. And say that from my own experience. I mean, when I was diagnosed with it, it was so debilitating for me that I traveled across the country to find specialists to work with. And that is absolutely going to be a key factor in your wellness journey, is if you can partner with someone who really can guide you and that like and trust.
Amazing. Do you have any quick tips on what to look for in a practitioner that's going to be most supportive for thyroid health? I know my
Yeah.
personal experience with my thyroid, I went to many different practitioners that just wanted to
Mhm.
order TSH. And when my TSH came back normal, they said, "You're fine." Do you have any quick tips on who to look for or what to look for?
Yeah, for sure. Top three things that I would say I'd recommend when looking for a provider. For one, is make sure that they order a full thyroid panel, know what that is. There is in conventional medicine, there's a little check mark box for a thyroid panel, but it is not the markers we're talking about. That provider might not even be familiar with those because in medical training in school, we're really only taught to order a TSH. So make sure that someone is looking at that full picture. The other thing would be that they actually know how to counsel on lifestyle supplementation because there are so many research things that can help with thyroid function outside of just medication. And most practitioners, most endocrinologists will counsel you that there's nothing you can do lifestyle wise, and that this one medication is the only thing to help. So, those would be a few of the things I would recommend.
100%. Yes, I've had that experience. This is your only option. We can both tell you, both Sashi and I can tell you with extensive experience in functional integrative medicine that that is not true. Right? There are so many things that you can do to support your body and your health and your thyroid. So thank you, Sashi. That was such a helpful conversation. This is such a critical missing piece that especially women that I work with sluggish thyroid also often see the sluggish thyroid contributing to sluggish motility. Right? These are connected.
Mhm.
I
Absolutely.
like to think of this thyroid when it gets kind of turned down, it makes everything low and slow. And when everything's kind of low and slow, that could be our energy, our mental function, our mood, everything gets kind of low and slow. And the speed of transit from food all the way through our GI tract is included in that puzzle. So if
Mhm.
you feel like everything's kind of low and slow, really pay attention to what Sashi was talking about because it's going to help support what the next steps might be so you can support your thyroid and better support your health and in turn also your gut. So if you're dealing with gut symptoms that just won't budge and wondering whether it's something more, thyroid might be a missing piece for you. But it's not the whole pie, it's a piece of the pie. So what you eat, how you support your gut, and how you live your life day to day all matter a ton. Like Sashi mentioned, things like blood sugar regulation, adding protein into meals, making sure that you're sleeping and managing stress. These are all critical pieces to the puzzle. So if you want to get to the root of what's going on, I've linked it below. And I've also linked some information about Sashi, including where to find her. Thanks so much, friends. We'll talk to you soon.